400 here for our meeting today in terms of who is registered. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Know that this will be a information-packed lead meeting today, and therefore we may go over our half an hour. But as always, our goal is to get you as much clear and concise information as we possibly can at this time to assist you with the start for many of our winter season. When you think about the last 10 months that we've been through, really since we've been doing lead and since we've experienced COVID, we've had moments like we have right now, and it is today with a heavy heart as to where we're at as a nation and what we need to do as adults. And we hope that our student athletes that we serve and our students will do a better job than we have been able to do. But we recognize where we're at as a nation right now. I think our hope and our glimmer of hope are our student athletes and the programs that we're able to offer at this time. We do want to welcome 2021, even though it's starting to feel a little bit where we left off of 2020. Know that we've been working feverishly really throughout December and now into January to get you the most correct information at the right time. None of this has the timing been easy or convenient for us, yet we continue to try and get it to you as accurately as possible as we begin. So we are going to welcome 2021. We're so appreciative and grateful that we have the opportunity to begin this week. January 4th was the start, and we're looking forward to competition next week. Number of topics today that are really important, and we know that you have many questions around. And we're going to take a walk backwards a little bit about the timeline, when and what we've done to get to where we are today. Really the beginning and start of our winter season. Masks continue to be a popular question and where we're at, and that's very, very fluid at this time. As information changes, we will be getting that to you, along with mass spectators in and around event facility management, and then wrestling specific. There's a lot of questions around certifications, weigh-ins, so on and so forth. And then upcoming guidance that will continue to come to you along with that information. We can't forget about the fact that we're still going to do competitive section placement here yet this year and address that there are where we're at in the timeline and also where we're at in terms of enrollment. So that being said, well, let's go ahead and get started here. And Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's take that walk backwards a little bit as to how we got to where we are today.
Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. And we are right into it. You are very busy, as are we. And just want to, again, help people have some perspective as far as when decisions were made and how we progressed through this, and even the recent action that has happened. It's just over 50 days ago that the pause was put in place. Yet sometimes it seems a lot further than that, and other times it seems like it was just a couple weeks ago. Our board of directors, and I'll mention a little more about RTP and the work that they've done, approved models that put us in a good place as decisions were being made. And we were getting close to break time for a lot of schools when the state said that the pause is going to continue forward, but it's going to end for activities on January 4th. And we're fortunate to be in that week now where we're participating. Yet there were lots of questions around what does that mean, what's it going to look like, and we had to wait. The day before Christmas Eve, we learned from the state that swimming pools could be open, but it didn't tell us yet at that point when we're going to be able to compete or what that was going to look like. But every time one of these things comes from the state level, that means that there's work that needs to be done because you have lots of questions, there's lots of details that need to be sorted out. And so we continue to work to try to do that in real time. It was right between Christmas and New Year's where the state released the information through the sports practice guidance that allowed competitions to begin on January 14th. And it's when we found out that face coverings were going to be required within competition for a number of our activities. And so what that prompted was a requirement to go back and take a look at all of the sports-specific guidance and update each one of those documents, work to have them be as consistent as possible, yet be able to identify those places where they're going to be unique or different so that you as administrators and for your coaches could appropriately administer and lead those activities. And so we get started on Monday, and we no sooner get started and we see updated information regarding masks and face coverings. And that conversation in your community and within our office continues on a regular basis. And then just yesterday, the state opened up more. We had some good information ahead of time, as did the entire state, that dials were going to be turned back a little bit and allowed to open up a little bit more. But that brings more information. And so that puts us in this position where we are right now today, with lots of these changes being just recent, and having to try to get those out to you. And that's the reason for so much information as part of this. If we step forward one more slide there, Laura, would be great. And we'll see that, you know, one of the things that's fortunate is that the return to participation group did a great job of not getting focused on just one approach. And they created models that had flexibility. And it's going to be a key, not only now, but through the remainder of the year, that we're going to plan an awful lot, yet we're going to have to change in the moment. And so appreciate their work, and again, appreciate the board of directors' support to say, we've got some models that can be used maybe as is, or with slight adjustments to help us move forward. So from that perspective, we are in a good place right now. And I know that people want lots more answers about what does end of season look like right now, yet we're going to continue to use that flexibility, at the same time working to get you answers about timelines and what postseason is going to look like as soon as we are able to do that. So with that, Bob, I will turn it back to you, and we'll continue forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Eric, and you hit the nail on the head, right? I spoke to an AD yesterday, and they said we're using our third version of the winter schedule, right, that they have created, and we know that's where we are at. And some of you already want answers around spring too, so we know we have another season coming before us. And be patient. We want to make sure you have the right information as opposed to what we believe might happen. We're so grateful for the opportunity for you to begin and working with our student athletes on the 4th. And here's what we've heard, right, where the focus is, and really how we're different in many ways than other opportunities, is that the focus is on the positives and the experiences and connecting our student athletes back with the caring adult in their lives, and our coaches and advisors. And again, how we start, we need to start in a way that is expected of us. Needs to be appropriate. We need to become acclimated, and in many ways, right, we hope that in wearing those masks that we do become acclimated, and we're able to transition effectively. Give yourself time, give your student athletes time to work their way into this winter season. The reason we're able to get back up and running is because of you. Right? How you handle those challenges, the work that you've done with your student athletes. We need to embrace that responsibility that we've been given to provide opportunities for our student athletes that we know so badly need. Support those students, think long-term, right? Like, I'm not sure how it started in your school and in your community, but let's make progress and make it better. And we hope we're in a different place a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and months from now, as we engage in this winter season. We're going to get you those guidance and protocols to the best of our ability. Follow them. Don't put yourself in that position where you're stepping outside of those and creating an environment that is difficult to explain to within your public. As we look at beginning, and again, we talked about change over the last 10 months, 11 months here. Things continue to change, and one of those has been how we participate in a connection to a learning model. We spent a lot of time in the fall around metrics and where your school district is at and where and when, according to MDH, they were able to participate. That is no longer tied to the learning model, so to speak, or county data. It is really local control and individual districts making that decision as to when it's right for their communities and their schools and their students to participate. So we want to make sure that we clarify and remind you on that. And as that changes, we will continue to update that as well. A lot of questions around that first competition, right? When we think about students students beginning maybe not on the planned start date according to Model 2, or districts beginning differently. Here's what we can't forget, and look back to the 500 series, which is really that team, and then the 411 with the individual, and how do we apply that that actual language. So when you think about that 500 series, it often talks about 2 weeks prior to competition. That 2 weeks have been applied into that 10th day, right? So if we're starting on Monday the 4th, we know that 10th day is the 14th that you could begin competition, and that is for our sports in the winter, other than our alpine, Nordic, and gymnastics that have different applications or language within that 500 series. So remember, this is for the team, for that sport, not necessarily for the individuals. When individuals aren't able to participate over a long period of time, or can't start at the same time as a team does, if there's a delayed start, remember that the student athlete, the health and safety is first, right? And that we need to make sure that physically and sport specifically, they are ready to participate in a contest, right? So that will be up to you and your coach to determine when they have that sport specific physical readiness that they are able to participate as an individual. We did note down below there that if you need to see the actual language, go to 41110 B, where that is located, and that will assist you within the handbook as well. Moving on to the next slide. What is, Eric had mentioned return to participation and our models. And here's what we know in scheduling for our winter sports, right? It's still 2 events per week per sport. And again, we want to make sure that that we have the ability to be able to continue to compete once we start. We know that 2 games per week isn't often convenient in getting the number of contests in, but it does work, especially in time and when in COVID situations where schools and or teams are in difficult positions. So that 2 event per week continues to exist. And then that exceeds to 3 contests per week in the final 2 regular season of competition. Again, and that can be weather related and COVID related. We recommend you don't schedule contests into that period of time. Give yourself that flexibility towards the end to be able to assist you in scheduling as many contests as you possibly can. There's been some confusion around what again can we do in the winter and how is it the same or different than the fall? Very much the same. Question around scrimmaging, that is interscholastic, right? 2 schools coming together to scrimmage is something that you cannot do at this time. Yet, from an inter-squad scrimmage, staying within your pods, following protocols and guidelines, that's something that you continue to do. I think one of the things that MDH continues to hark is that regional, conference, local teams as defined by the school is preferred, right? That is something that is going to assist us and helps us being able to play as we are during our winter season. They're pretty emphatic about interstate and what that looks like. It should still feel local or regional, and that 50 miles one way in competition when we're crossing state borders is important. Now, if that is a member school that is co-op, that is different, right? But that interstate competition, we're going to hold true to that 50 miles one way. The green boxes in that Model 2, as Eric referenced, that RTP put together. We continue to hear from our region secretaries around sports, especially like hockey, where you're scheduling ice. Try not to schedule or do not schedule during that green time. We still need that flexibility. We're making progress here on what's going to take place after our sections. We need those facilities secured. We need those dates and times secured before we can move away from those green boxes. If there is time left during those green areas, once we know that, for you to be able to schedule and fill in regular season contests, we will be able to do that. Please do not do so now, though, as we're getting closer and closer to defining those dates and times. And we appreciate your patience in doing so. Again, we recommend not playing on back-to-back days, right? That is something that if you're playing those 2 contests per week, and if we do have a COVID situation, that can put you in a difficult situation. Eric, I'm going to take a breath there. Anything that I missed in this area of winter sports and scheduling?
I'll unmute. Sorry about that. No, a really good job, Bob, walking through a lot of factors. And the good news is that most of this has not changed from previous guidance. And so, again, the state has been really strong on really strong recommendation to keep things localized and to minimize size of gatherings and things like that. And crossing borders is not supported there. So I think that that's important, yet we know we do have some schools that are very near borders that have a significant portion of their schedule that is across the state line. And so certainly understand that. Again, the back-to-back days, the big purpose there is that should there be some kind of contact, et cetera, that gives you time to address that, properly go through that decision tree that's part of the MDE process to figure out close contacts, and to be able to then address that and still be prepared with those that are able to compete again at the next time that you have a contest in a week. So that's why that's a best practice aspect and highly recommended here at the league.
Great, thanks, Eric.
Slide number 9 is.
I'm going to apologize here. I'm struggling with. Go ahead.
Nope, I was just going to turn it back to you, Bob.
All right, thanks, Eric. And I'm going to apologize. I'm struggling a little bit with Wi-Fi here today, and so if I pause or if I break up, my apologies, as I'm battling Wi-Fi with my 2 boys that are trying to go to school as well. Let's delve into our masks and or face coverings. Just know that everything we're going to share is located within the document, as Laura has shown here on the slide, in the mask and face covering guidance. And then where you will find this, you will be able to locate it, anything and everything that we're going to share with you today. So as we think about our masks and where we are at, if we could move on to the next slide, please.
I think I've got this one, Bob, and so I'll take that, and hopefully we can keep
Eric,
you up
can
to
you hear
speed
me there?
with
I'm sorry.
As we look at masks and face coverings, I think
Yeah,
it's
no, I'll jump over. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm going to give this a try. All right, so as we look at masks and face coverings and the requirements and exceptions, certainly the State High School League did not ask for masks required during competitive time periods. Our strong stance was we want to get back to playing and participating as quickly as we can. And what might we need to do to make that happen? And we're willing to get started. And so with that, we do have a mask and face covering requirement for a number of our activities. And that includes during the time of physical exertion. There are some exceptions for some sports. And again, the American Academy of Pediatrics is the one that the Department of Health is relying on significantly. And they have carved out specific exceptions for certain sports. And so this guidance will be in the documents and will be clearly stated there as to when they can or cannot take off a mask. And so for wrestling, that one has a carve out when you are in person-to-person wrestling contact. So in your practices, whenever you're going through conditioning, individual workouts, things like that, students should be masked up at all times. Again, coaches should also be masked up at all times. When a wrestler engages with another wrestler in wrestling contact would be the time that the mask would come off. It's not wait until someone's in trouble, but it's during that time that they have person-to-person wrestling contact. So that's really key. If a coach is a wrestling partner or is demonstrating wrestling moves with another wrestler, that would be the time that the coach would also take off the mask. And so again, being wise about that, but just the general rule of keep them on as much as possible. Gymnastics and cheerleading, the excessive risk that comes with masks has to do with the potential that an individual would either be on an apparatus in gymnastics or in the air with little time to respond or react to avoid other injury. And so again, if it's physical training, conditioning, stretching, things like that, masks should be worn at all times. Cheerleading, it's the stunting and the flips and so on that could be a part of that. And so when students are engaged in the actual training on an apparatus is a time when those should come off. And swimming and diving is really clear about any time you're in the water or going to be entering the water, the mask should be off. All other times on the pool deck, a mask should be on. And so all student athletes should have a mask. They should wear them to and from practice. They should wear them to and from contests. And those are the ones that right now have exemptions. We continue to talk with the state in regards to our outdoor sports of Nordic skiing and alpine skiing. And I have a conversation scheduled yet this afternoon on that again today as we continue to identify how are those best addressed as an outdoor sport. At the current time, the interpretation is as our activities, they are wearing masks. And so With that, Susie and or Laura, do we have Bob back to take on number 11?
Eric, if you would move on to 11, we're working to get Bob back.
All right. So again, the appropriate masks and face coverings. The Department of Health has a general list of approved face coverings. The State High School League has taken a look at those and has limited that list slightly by removing bandanas and scarves. And so the ones that we allow for our activities are the paper or disposable mask face coverings that we see lots of places and oftentimes can be picked up on the way into a business. Other cloth mask face coverings are also appropriate, and many of you have those. Some have school-specific ones. Some are sold very regularly over Amazon or other places online. And of course, neck gaiters are another one that is very, very common, right? Big importance is that the mask or face covering must cover the nose and mouth completely, and it should not have any slots or holes or vents in the mask. And some of those are out there for specific purposes, but they would not be appropriate. So as we go forward into slide number 12, I'm going to be stepping into an area where I have less expertise, and what I'm going to suggest is that we leave 12 and 13 around the helmets and the hockey specific ones, and let's move on to 14, and we'll try and circle back and get those if we can get Bob back on track.
Eric, can you hear me?
Eric,
I can.
All right, I'm back. I'm back, and
yeah,
I'm back. I apologize again here, and whether or not you can see me, I'm not sure. I'm on my phone, but hopefully you can hear me. So when we think about the unique mask face coverings, this is language that is right out of the document that we noted. Just note that specifically they view things differently. So that language is there for you to take a look at, but really the next slide, hockey specific. Hockey specific, these are two options that are available, and this changed a little bit. So when you look at the one on the left that is known as a spit shield, from fall sports, we have that experience. Again, ideally what MDH would like to see happen is a cloth mask along with that, but that is only a recommendation. And then the one on the right is more of that one that would cover your mouth and nose as cloth, and again, that is something that would be for the cage, a cage type mask worn in hockey. And just remember, we want to be flexible with all of our masks, right? So when we think about that flexibility, we're not going to be as much worried about the type of mask or whether it's paper and or cloth. They're both okay in doing so, but making sure that they're appropriate and what might be on them in terms of logos or statements, anything like that. That's where we would have to govern. And so just flexible with them, again, as long as they're appropriate, and utilizing language that we have within bylaw, as well as what could be on a mask if there were anything. I think questions about who enforces that, as I understand that they're coming in as well, is remember, it is up to the coach to make sure that their student athlete is properly equipped. Again, in a sport where something like a mouth guard is worn, it is up to that coach to make sure that they are properly equipped. If there isn't a contest and a mask slides down or falls down, that's something that would be addressed on court or on ice, I suppose, in cases as well, when you get a break or stoppage in play, to make sure once that game starts or a student athlete is participating, officials will do their best, but they are not going to regulate mask wearing. That would be the school's responsibility or the site administrator's responsibility coming through. Anything I missed there before we move into the exemptions?
I think you're good, Bob. Thank you.
So again, exemptions is language that MDH has identified. What we have tried to do is make that language clear for you and working through it. Against you see the middle bulleted larger text that is here. And again, that's the definition of that medical professional, that licensed physician, and the statute language that is along with that. And then below there, if an exemption is given by that licensed physician for one of those reasons as noted, what the expectation is. That should be in writing to you as an administrator, that you know that that student athlete is exempt from wearing a mask. And again, this is language that has changed and have been updated most recently from MDH. If anything should change there, we would continue to get that out to you. All right, anything there?
I think you're still on point, Bob. I think we're going to turn
Okay,
to Laura here to talk a little bit about upcoming information.
And
So
Eric, if I could, Laura.
Moving ahead, just as we are seeing the slides and people, I'm seeing a lot of phones coming out to grab pictures of slides. Remember that these slides are posted to that lead page either right before or soon after each meeting. So if there are things you need to recap. Back in the middle of October, we put out a document that was titled Event and Facility Management and Guidance and Information. And it was around the time that spectators were being allowed into both indoor and outdoor events. And the goal of that document was really to create a comprehensive document that spanned a number of activities. And it included categories like spectator management and capacity, concessions, game event and personnel. It addressed bands, cheerleaders, media, etc. at indoor and outdoor state high school league events. Using the information that we've received from the Department of Health yesterday and pulling pieces from other documents, we are updating that document to reflect the most current information. So currently you will still see the one that was out in October. That is outdated. We will be getting you an update later today with a number of pieces in it. One of those will be a link to this updated document. As we move forward into the next slide, we're going to talk about and share with you some of the pieces that will be in that document. But again, know that you'll be getting about a 3-page document that encompasses all of this information and more. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Eric to talk a little bit about spectator limits at events.
Thanks, Laura. And just a note, we will obviously go over just a bit today, so probably figure about another 15 minutes or so. And as we talk about management, we now know that as of yesterday that spectators are going to be allowed at our competitions. And remember that, as always, schools have the opportunity to be more restrictive with what works best for you. The recommendation that was a requirement before is 2 spectators per participant for competitions, not to exceed the capacity limits that are below. And there are good reasons for why that might be a good place to start, but that's going to be up to the local schools. And so the limits are the lesser of 25% of the venue capacity or 150 attendees. And so when you look at the numbers, that's for indoor experiences that we would be hosting. And if you move to an outdoor event, then it is the lesser of 25% of the venue capacity or 250. And when we think about our outdoor events right now for winter, typically that's going to be 250 because they're going to be pretty expansive locations for that to happen. Down below is a key statement that has not changed, and that is that the competitive pod, that being the participants, managers, coaches, officials, those essential personnel to the event happening, are considered a separate pod from the spectator pod. And that is only the case when you're able to keep a 12-foot barrier between all of the competition and any of the spectators. So that's a key management aspect there. And it's important, and I know that you've done that specifically back to volleyball. Many schools were doing that to be able to keep their spectators separate from their competitive pod. That part is important as we go forward. So again, think about what works best in your facility and how to best manage, because having individuals who attend registered is also going a requirement, so that if there is a case or something like that, people need to have notification ability for those who attend. So as we look forward and think about, okay, so within those activities, what's going to be okay and what's going to be a challenge? So we are allowing media, and then again, that language is not significantly different from before. They do count as part of the spectator count, so part of that 150, and they are allowed to be there. And again, there's recommendations that will be included around, potential numbers and how to best manage that. Obviously, we want them to be able to tell the story of our students, their experiences in the sports, but we also need to keep that in a controllable amount. And I know that you want to get family members, et cetera, for the participants to also be able to attend. cheer, because their activity is cheer and it's not secondary to the competition, it is their own activity, they are allowed to be at indoor events and be a part of it if they remain in their own pod, and we can assure a distance of 12 feet from any of the competition and also from the spectators. So again, we have to think really thoughtfully about how that can fit into our locations to make that work. But those two are both allowed. At this time, what's not allowed is bands at contests or non-contest exhibitions or performances. So oftentimes we think about a halftime show at basketball or something that might be ceremonial or nature at other events as well that take place. So at this time, we're not introducing additional individuals in there other than our spectators, our cheerleaders, and the competitors and those that are in the competitive pod. So again, this will all be part of that event and facility management, which will be coming your way. People are always asking about concessions, and concessions are not recommended at this time. And the reason for the lack or for not recommending it is because it creates a gathering point in a number of situations, either waiting in line to get food and or the consuming of it in particular areas. And oftentimes, as is our world and our society, gathering together for meals is very typical. And so it's not recommended, but it's not completely not allowed, because we do have some that have done a great job and understand how to do concessions by eliminating all of the gatherings. And to do so, they have to have a full COVID-19 preparedness plan. And so think about your food service, and have they put together all of the protocols for touchless serving and all of the aspects that are part of it, individual packaging, etc. And so it's different than having oftentimes what we might see at other youth sport events. It's got to be very, very well prepared and well organized as we go forward to have concessions, if that's something that you're going to be providing. Next slide, Laura. Well, actually, I want to back up just one. Bob, I see that you're back with us. Anything else on hosting of events before we step into some wrestling specific information?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it really well. There's questions, I think, around where does media fit into that in terms of that 150 as well. And I think you addressed it there, Eric. And so our dance teams, right, they're competitive dance teams. That is not something they should be doing at other contests right now. When dancing, that should be at their dance competitions. Again, controlling that environment, not mixing environments or mixing pods, is something that is important. And I cannot get direct messages right now. So please don't message me or chat with me during this meeting here at this time, as I'm working from my phone. So I'm going to come back to masks at the end of the meeting here, Eric. Otherwise, I think we're in a good position.
All right, we'll move on to wrestling. A couple specifics there. And thanks to our wrestling advisory last evening, spent a number of, actually a couple different hours of conversation about this, and people are trying to get a handle on where things are at with wrestling. And so weigh-ins are unique because with this year and COVID and trying to eliminate the amount of gathering, weigh-ins are now happening at the local school or the home school for each team prior to their travel. So obviously that has to be done there, and there are some rules around that. And the established window of time frame, because folks are always thinking about is there advantage or disadvantage to different times, is that weigh-ins should take place 30 minutes prior to departure of the first team. And again, most schools are scheduling triangulars. So whoever is traveling first would identify what time they're going to start with their weigh-ins 30 minutes prior to leaving. And then the other two teams are eligible to weigh in at that time as well if they choose. They have up until 60 minutes prior to the first match to do their weigh-ins if that works for them. So assumption in having people weigh in at home is that not both teams are going to travel to a site at the same time because we're trying to limit the amount of gathering and the amount of time that schools are together. So that window again is from 30 minutes prior to the departure of the first team until 60 minutes prior to the first match happening. So that window should allow for all three teams to complete weigh-ins at their site. Those weigh-ins must be recorded on a paper form using the track wrestling weigh-in sheet, and your wrestling coaches are very comfortable and familiar with that. And then all weigh-ins must be witnessed by and certified by a school administrator who is not part of the wrestling staff. And so just another check and balance there, and making sure that we try to do that as effectively and fairly as we can to have students ready to go. And I thought the Wrestling Advisory did a great job just identifying our #1 goal is to be able to provide opportunities in wrestling. And we just need to do this as well as we possibly can. When it comes to weight certifications, it's a little bit unique this year because the 2-pound growth allowance is already in effect. That does not change the weight certification. So if a student were certified at a weight that is maybe 1.5 pounds higher than the next lower one, they are not certified down to that lower weight. They stay certified at the weight that's above that marker. And so that 2-pound allowance only acts as a 2-pound allowance in terms of the weigh-in, not for the weight certification. That's a key clarification, and that is in the wrestling weight certification clarification, again, in the documents that are provided for our schools. And then finally, skin checks are often or have been a part of the weigh-in process. Those will be done by officials on site. So expect that when your teams arrive that you have a location. And again, teams should be done separately and in different locations, but that an official will be able to do skin checks at that time. And it might be a JV official or someone or one of the officials at another time for that third team that would arrive for a triangular to be able to make that happen. And again, without any individual tournaments or team tournaments or things like that going on, we're really talking duels and tries. This information is all specific to regular season. When postseason is defined, specific weigh-in processes will then come out for postseason process as well. So I want to make sure that folks have the understanding this is how things will work for the regular season. I think that that is what we have on the wrestling side of things. And we'll turn it back to Laura just to talk a little bit more about additional information that's coming your direction.
Thanks, Eric. And before I move to the next slide, just want to clarify with wrestling, this document that's called Wrestling Weight Certification Clarification is a second document that people within your wrestling program should have. It was sent, I believe, midday on New Year's Eve. So I just want to make sure that that one did not get lost in a shuffle somewhere. Your wrestling program should have 2 documents that they're working from. One is that general wrestling guidance and information, and the second is that document that is just about the weight certification. So as we move on, just thinking about what's coming next. These are things that will be arriving for you going forward. Referenced earlier, that event and facility management document, that will be in your inbox later today. The other pieces we continue to work on are updating the sport and activity specific guidance and information documents. And the emails that you send to all of us throughout the week, the work that we do with the liaison group once a week, and your questions into chat are critical to helping us update those documents. They help us know what questions are out there and what else needs to be addressed. So thank you for continuing to send those our way. We continue to balance, do we send out a new one every time a word or a sentence is updated, or do we wait until we have several updates? So know that some of the pieces that we're working on clarifying, one is around distancing on a hockey bench, acknowledging that that is much different than social distancing within a basketball court, etc. Some, as Eric referenced, some pieces around wrestling weigh-ins and skin checks. There are some pieces on fine arts that need to be clarified, and another list that we just continue to have things that we need to update. We learn from you what you're looking for, and then receiving further interpretations on those. So know that the first one that'll hit you is that event and facility management, and that will come later today. And then we continue to update those events, the activity specific ones, and those will be coming your way shortly too. So moving back into a little bit more of a non-COVID world, Bob, a little information from you, please, on classification and competitive section information.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Laura. And it is something that we do on every 2-year cycle. We did have a board workshop yesterday and did spend time discussing, and Eric, I would invite you into that conversation as well. Just know where we're at in the timeline, where that is located. Again, competitive section placement classification, that's trying to create equity in where you compete. right? We know there's concerns around enrollment. We know there's concerns around free and reduced lunch. We're going to continue to do the best that we can to make it as equitable as possible, but also as accurate as possible. So if we need to use other vehicles to assist us in doing so and determine those MSHSL enrollments, we're going to do that. Know that MNI AAA and through AD advisory, we will engage in that. Really, the next thing you need to do, and is due by the end of this month, is determine whether or not you're going to opt up in a sport. If you are going to opt up, and traditionally no, we would like to know that. If you get your enrollments here in February, your MSHSL enrollments, and didn't realize that you may have moved down a class due to those enrollments and would still like to move up, that's something we would assist you with. But if you already know you're going to move up, that is something we would like to know, and that's what that opt-up form is. So Laura, anything I missed there? Otherwise, Laura, if you could go back to the slide with pictures of the actual masks, if you would. So just making sure very clear that mask on my left, with a bubble, as you call it, on the Bauer helmet. That is a bubble with a spit shield. That blue is a spit shield or a spray shield, as we learned during the fall. That would be acceptable and appropriate. Yet remember that, again, it is preferable that you would wear a cloth mask underneath that. But that blue piece is something that is covering holds on that shield. Minnesota Hockey approved it, and their governing body as well that approves their equipment. USA Hockey Equipment has approved that mask. And then again, the mask on the right is a material that would cover your mouth and nose as defined by MDH guidelines. It attaches to a cage. So again, those are examples of what could be worn. When it comes to masks, again, could you have a hockey team with two different types of masks or multiple different types of masks? Absolutely, you could. And we want that flexibility in all of our sports that have to wear those masks as long as they're appropriate. So could you have a combination of paper masks along with cloth masks, as long as they're meeting those definitions? That is something that you can do. And how can we be flexible to the best of our ability in allowing our student athletes to practice and or compete in those cases? So just wanted to go back to that. Laura, I don't know if you've been watching the our text thread here. I know we're reaching 45 minutes, but anything else that we should address here today that I either missed or we missed or should highlight?
Bob, I did just jump back to this past slide before the pictures of the hockey, and here's where it addresses what that alternative would need to be and consist of, the places it needs to cover and how it needs to protect. And again, this is direct information taken directly out of that COVID-19 sports practice guidance document.
Great. So they have that available to them. Again, we've given you a lot of information here today. There's more information to come, unfortunately, right? But we're doing our best to synthesize that information, making it practical so you can apply it and keep our student athletes participating here this week as we head into competition next week. Thanks for your attendance today, and appreciate all of your work, your great work that you're doing here in 2021. So thank you.